Hey there, it's Alex here. 31 years young and working as an urban planner in Portland, Oregon. Not exactly the spookiest job, right? But something happened last Halloween that shook me to my core. You wouldn't believe how haunted the ordinary streets of Portland can get. Maple Street is this old, long winding road flanked by historic houses on both sides. Every Halloween, it's a hotspot for trick-or-treaters, with the homes turning into haunted mansions, pirate ships, and even witch lairs. But there's one house, 144 Maple Street, that remains untouched every year. Kids avoid it like the plague, rumors swirling that it's haunted by its previous owner, Mrs. Blackwood, an old recluse who was said to have vanished without a trace years ago. Out of professional curiosity, I went to the city archives a week before Halloween to dig up any old plans or permits on the property. After hours of searching, I found an old diary, presumably Mrs. Blackwood's, sandwiched between dusty property maps. Curiosity piqued, I began reading. It was an ordinary journal for the most part, gardening tips, mentions of neighborhood gossip, and then, the entries began to get weird. She started talking about seeing a shadowy figure around her home. The last entry, dated October 31st, simply read, "He's here." Chills ran down my spine. But being a man of logic, I brushed it off as mere superstition and decided to investigate the property firsthand. On Halloween, as the sun began to set and kids started their candy quest, I approached 144 Maple Street. The air around the house was colder, the faded paint on the porch and the creaking steps set an eerie tone. The front door was slightly ajar, so I stepped inside. The house was in a state of decay, with cobwebs in every corner and furniture covered in white sheets. But the strangest thing was the massive, ornate grandfather clock in the center of the living room. The hands were frozen at midnight, and yet I could hear a soft ticking. Suddenly, the lights began to flicker, and out of nowhere, a gust of wind blew in, causing the windows to rattle and doors to slam shut. I could hear whispers, dozens of voices overlapping, growing louder and more frantic. Panic set in. I tried to leave, but the front door wouldn't budge. My heart raced as I scrambled to find another way out. Racing up the old wooden stairs, I headed towards the back of the house. Reaching what seemed to be Mrs. Blackwood's bedroom, I stumbled upon a shocking sight. There, in the middle of the room, was a circle drawn in salt, surrounded by old, burned-out candles. And at the center, another diary, newer this time. Hastily, I flipped it open to the last page. Mrs. Blackwood wrote about a ritual she attempted to rid her home of the shadowy figure, but instead, it trapped both of them inside the house forever. My head spun. The whispers grew louder, and the shadowy figure appeared at the bedroom door. Panicking, I picked up a candle and lit it, remembering something about light warding off spirits. Holding the candle up, I cautiously made my way downstairs. The figure followed, always staying in the shadows. Remembering the salt circle, I stepped inside, hoping it would offer some protection. The figure stopped, unable to cross the barrier. I was trapped, and time seemed to stand still. Hours felt like days. But then, the strangest thing happened. The grandfather clock chimed, echoing throughout the house. The figure recoiled with each chime, and as it struck 12, the figure vanished. As the last echo of the chime faded, the house seemed to come back to life. The door flung open, the lights stabilized, and the whispers silenced. I ran out, gasping for fresh air, greeted by the familiar sounds of children laughing and the sight of Halloween festivities. I never stepped foot in 144 Maple Street again. As for Mrs. Blackwood's diaries, I placed them back in the archives, locked securely away. And every Halloween, when I hear the chime of a clock, I'm reminded of that night, the night I almost became a permanent resident of Maple Street.